What's going on, all my satire goat fanatics out there? I'm back with another episode of Book Club for the first time in insert amount of time here, like a year and a half. Oh boy, I haven't been reading much. Yeah, for the past year, I've been way more focused on movies, video games, TV. I would say even social interactions more than reading, doing anything except for read pretty much. I haven't read a book since the spring, but I decided to start reading a little more in the summer, and one of the books that I did read, and one of the books that I do decide that I want to talk about here today in Book Club, is Frank Herbert's 1965 classic, Dune. This is Book Club. This is official. I'm wearing the suit, don't you see? So it's official. Spoiler alert, by the way, this will be a spoiler video. Put this early in the video, Jesse. Please do that. Let's just ignore the jogging pants. I really hope I cut those out. Dune is a sci-fi novel written by Frank Herbert and released in the year 1965, and it's one of the most influential sci-fi novels of all time, with many properties such as Star Trek, Star Wars, and even The Chronicles of Riddick. You know, that successful series, The Chronicles of Riddick. Taking a lot of ideas and a lot of tropes from Dune and making them household ideas that a lot of people recognize. The main plot of Dune centers around the teenager Paul Atreides and his parents, Lady Jessica and Duke Leto Atreides, are the rulers of their planet pretty much. This is in a fictional universe where everything is controlled under one emperor in a very Star Wars-like fashion, one could say, with a bunch of different houses, and the House Atreides has been having a rivalry with the House Harkonnen for years now, years and years and years. And House Harkonnen has control over a planet, you see. House Harkonnen has seemed to have somewhat of a relationship formed with the Emperor, where they decide, hey, let's give House Atreides the worst planet in the solar system. So Paul, along with his father Duke and his mother Lady Jessica, she's not even married to Duke Leto, mind you. That's a brilliant character thing I'll mention later. But the story ends up being about their life on the planet Arrakis, which is a sand planet, a desert planet that produces drugs, and the Harkonnens abandon it, and it's basically a trap that they're walking into. And that's all the plot I want to get into right now, because this may already sound like some, stories or ideas that you've heard before in previous media. A lot of Star Wars-esque stuff here. But the way that this novel is told is its biggest benefit, I think, because getting into this novel, I wasn't incredibly excited when I first began it. It is a little rough to get into, as much as that may piss off real bookheads, real literary fanatics. If I complain that this is a bit difficult to get into, but it kind of is. But that's not a complaint. That is very much a point in the favor of Dune here, because Frank Herbert just dumps you in the middle of the narrative, really, and it's quite respectable how he does this. He puts us in the middle of this universe where they have their own terms, their own rankings, their own dialect, and you just have to get used to it. And a genius thing that he's done is put a glossary in the back with all of the terms, and whenever you're confused, you can just look them up. They're all there in the back of this book. Beautiful artwork, by the way, Frank, if you had anything to do with this. Probably not, you're probably dead. And the universe is so fast, so dense, so well written out. I don't think I've ever experienced a novel, not even Lord of the Rings, I would say, where I start reading and then just realize, wow, this is a fully fleshed out universe, and I can get into it if I just look up some things and pay a bit of respect to the novel, because the novel is respecting me by allowing me to intellectually get myself into the universe of this novel. I become really ingrained with a lot of the ways that people talk formally, the ways that people talk casually. There's a difference, and the relationships that people have in this universe. It's medieval in a way, but it's also quite space opera, quite futuristic, and it's a tone and an atmosphere that I heavily enjoy. It's serious, and the plot does take itself seriously, but it's a space epic. It has to do that. And I believe it really, really does come through in the imagination, the creativity, and the way that these series of events play out in your mind. For years, even though Dune was a novel that was highly critically acclaimed, and I see why, and many movies such as Star Wars took influence from this novel, a lot of people said that this movie was unfilmable, and that's not something I agree with at all. Even though the 1970s David Lynch film sucked, Haven't watched it yet, but I know it sucked. The events in this novel, even though they do take place over the course of an entire lifetime almost, the events of this novel take place quite literally, with a lot of the universe bending aspects, a lot of the time splitting. It takes place over the course of many years, and it's kind of hard to adapt that into a feature-length film, but I believe that Denis Villeneuve is going to do that with his newest film, Dune, releasing later this year, which is part of the reason why I wanted to read this beautiful novel here to get prepared for the movie. And I'm really excited now because a lot of the things that he did in Arrival are in this book. You know, a lot of the ways that characters experience time. Paul, who is very much so the protagonist of this book, has to drink drugs, concoctions of drugs, take drugs throughout the course of this novel, which is a really progressive thing to do, by the way. Just have the main character just popping drugs to elevate his mind. But that's what he does. He takes a lot of drugs. It ends up being revealed that he's very much a prophetic character. He's a character who's been prophesized before in many different cultures, such as the culture on Arrakis. He's the only male who's able to endure this test that a series of telepathic witches called the Bene Gesserit. It's on the screen. It's going to be on the screen right now. But it's a character who is very highly regarded as the chosen one in this universe. Once again, an idea that is in Star Wars, in Harry Potter, in Star Trek, it's in everything, the chosen one idea. And even in this novel, something that I adore about it is that even though it's kind of one of the first things, obviously not the first thing, the Bible does this, right? It's the Bible. It's this story that's been told thousands and thousands of times throughout civilization. But this is the first time it's really in a space opera like this. Characters landing on a planet, no idea about the culture. A guy realizes, hey, I'm kind of Christ in this culture. I'm supposed to lead these people. And he has such an intelligent view of it. He's like, hey, this probably isn't true, but if I go along with it, I can help them, get them on my side. They're going to be an advantage to me in my plot to destroy the Harkonnens. And hey, being God's kind of cool. It doesn't really confirm that this is true, that this religion is true, but it's interesting to see how the novel plays with these ideas. I will say, even though I enjoyed the epic plot of this novel, even though I enjoyed a lot of the messing around it does with time, a lot of the hallucination scenes, and a lot of the interactions between characters, there are a lot of characters in this novel. Some of them seem to be a bit unnecessary. For example, Vladimir Harkonnen, the antagonist of this novel, a looming presence over everyone in it. Really cool, by the way. Cool character. I love his design, how he's described. I love his conniving evil plans. He very much seems kind of like Darth Vader in a way, although way fatter, way more fat. He has a nephew who's going to be played by Dave Bautista in this movie named Rassen. His name's Rassen, I believe. And there's also another character who he's in cahoots with later on in the novel that I don't really want to get into or spoil. But they could have just very easily been the same character, and they're just kind of played against each other unnecessarily. I think that's a point of drama that doesn't really matter ultimately in the grand scheme of the novel. Maybe it's in the sequel novels or prequel novels, because I know there are tons of those. But just in the confines of this one novel, that wasn't a very engaging plot development. There are certain characters who really stick out, like Gurney. Gurney's humility and his complete dedication to the House of Atreides is really fun to watch. I think he's an honorable character, a man of honor, truly. I really like the betrayer character early on in the novel, the Doctor, who has been, Duke Leto's doctor for years now, who he trusts fully, and he betrays him because of something he heard about his wife, even though he knows it isn't true. I think that Duke Leto's, spoiler once again, death, where he attempts to kill Vladimir Harkonnen, but he ends up killing his Mentat instead, is a genius scene. That Mentat, also a great character. I love how self-aware he was. The idea of Mentats is so cool, because they're just characters who get to play life on easy mode. They constantly get to hear other people's thoughts and kind of know their futures in a way, and it's really cool for characters to be able to do that and just be self-aware that even though they're that strong, they're slaves in this world. They're slaves to the elite and to the upper class. So that's something this novel also does very well, is display its themes of how the upper class crushes the minorities, crushes the lower class, and just puts them into the outskirts of the world where they starve and don't get a chance to live properly, which is what the citizens of Arrakis were forced to do. And the idea of having Paul, a kid from royalty, someone who is literally able to control an entire nation if he wishes. The Duke, He is Paul, who is literally a duke at this point of the novel, is forced to live with them, become ingrained in their lifestyle, become addicted to spice, the drug that they produce, and to, bear a child with the wife that he finds there, and to still be humble, and to still have passion for revenge for his father, and taking over the Harkonnens for what they did by sneak attacking them, It's an engaging plot. A lot of the characters are engaging, but there are some completely useless characters in here, I must admit. The novel is quite long. It's well over 600 pages, the version I have, but you need that much with the time skip and a lot of the descriptions. The sandworms alone take 9,000 pages to describe. But ultimately, I would give it a read. Even though you've seen a lot of these plot points before in Dune, there are plot points that it's good to know where they came from. It's good to know how they inspired other pieces of media. And it's quite artistic. It's stunning. Is it the best science fiction novel of all time? Maybe not, and in fact, I would say some of the narrative elements are maybe a bit bare bones for modern audiences because they've seen them all before, and that's the only thing bare bones about this, trust me. But yeah, it's got a mixture of mysticism, invention, environmental awareness, and it's just such a cool universe, It's not perfect by any means, but I would say it's a really, really good, bordering on great novel. I would probably give it a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. Let's say 8 out of 10 for the culture. I love this book. I'm going to talk about more books. I'm reading more. I'm an English major. I'm in school again. Yeah, that's all I'm talking about today. Satire Goat Fanatics. Love you. I'm back on camera. Bye-bye.